I've been wearing these jeans as work pants for working and doing things in the yard, and this hole keeps ripping larger, and I finally decided it's time to either get rid of them or patch them. And I didn't want to get rid of them because the rest of the jeans are fine, so I figured let's patch these up, and I'm going to show you how I ended up figuring out how to make this work so that my knees are protected and no longer getting beat up when wearing these pants. Now this pair of pants, the butt ripped out in them, and I decided there's no reason to patch the butt. I'm not wearing them ripped out like this, so that makes these a perfect candidate to become the material to use for the patch of these jeans. I'm going to use the back side of the bottom of the leg because that seems to be the most least worn piece of fabric on the jeans, and I will cut this out to use to patch up the hole. I'm using zigzag scissors to help decrease the chance of fraying, but if you don't have these kinds of scissors, you can use just regular fabric scissors or whatever scissors you have to cut out the jean material. And when cutting, I'm making sure I'm cutting a larger piece of fabric than what I know I'm going to need, so I have room to mess up. And in the end, I will go back and trim it up so that it's not so bulky on the inside when I'm wearing them. To clean it up, I'm just going to cut some of these long strings off. I'm not worried about the fray around the hole, but just these long ones I want to cut off. Before I start sewing, I need to anchor this patch onto my pant leg. So I'm just going to stuff it inside the pant leg, and with my one hand make sure it's smooth and flat, and then begin pinning it down where I want it to make sure that the entire hole is going to be filled with this patch with no gaps or anything on the edges or sides. Once it is all pinned, we are ready to sew. So I'm going to take it to the sewing machine. I'm using a denim sewing needle, and then I'm using an all-purpose thread. I wanted something a little stronger, but this is all I had. And I need to refill my bobbin, and I need to string my sewing machine. If you have never done this, I will walk you through mine. They're pretty basic, but there's little quirks to different machines. But this is a basic threading of your sewing machine. You're gonna start with putting your spool of thread on the spool holder of some sorts, whatever your machine has. Mine also has this little cap to hold it on so it doesn't go running away. I have this little hole up at the top that you put your thread through. And then there's this little knob thing. You're gonna hook it around and then down and around, and then you have to make it through this hook thing again a second time. And then there's this other little hole that you're gonna feed your thread through. And then on the other side of that tension knob, there's this little loop you have to get your thread hooked through. And down on the bottom, another loop to hook through. And then you're ready to thread it through the needle. And all these steps are important to get just right because it keeps the tension of your thread correct when sewing, so it doesn't get tangled or too loose or too tight. Once your needle is threaded, you need to get your bobbin thread pulled up through the base so they're both going out the back and ready to sew. And the way you do that is you turn the knob on the far right of the machine away from you, and that makes the needle go up and down, and it will make the thread loop around and pull your base thread up and through. I realized, even though I already threaded the needle, that I did not change the needle yet. So to do that, you just untwist this little knob at the top of the needle to release it, pull it out, and then slide in the needle you are choosing in. And usually it only goes in one way, so you'll know when you have it in the right way. And then just turn that little knob away from you to tighten it down, and thread your needle again, and you are ready to sew. I also double check the knob there on the left. You see me tighten. That just tightens the foot down because on my machine it loosens as I sew. Now after I did all that work, I was still somehow convinced that I was going to sew down a pant leg, when to sew down a straight line you need to have a flat fabric. Otherwise you will sew through both sides and I will not be able to put my leg in this pant leg. So I decided I would do a zigzag stitch at the base of the rip to give it strength, and had to then go to hand sewing the rest of the patch on So now that you know how to thread your sewing machine, you don't need it, and you need just a regular needle and the same thread, and you're going to hand sew this size of a patch on because, yeah, this regular sewing machine can't handle a long pant leg. Also, it's always handy to keep your sewing machine manual around because it tells you how to do the different stitches, and I couldn't get this thing to work right. Eventually, I got it done, and now we're on to hand sewing. But always keep those manuals because yeah, you need to refer to that from time to time. I ended up sewing a diagonal stitch one way around the pant leg, and then once I got to the starting point, I did the opposite of the X stitch going back so that it's like a crisscross look. I figured that would hold pretty strong, so it's kind of like a hand sewn zigzag done twice, if that makes sense, to make these X's. And it took a little time, but not too bad actually. Once that part is done, I need to turn it inside out and trim up the excess of the patch fabric because I don't want that flapping around when I'm wearing the pants. So I'm taking my zigzag scissors again, and carefully, without cutting any of the jean or stitches or anything, I'm cutting around. And I did notice I sewed a little part down that I didn't want to, but whatever, they're work pants. It doesn't have to be perfect. So once I have them trimmed up, I am ready to use these pants and get out and get some yard work done. Let me know what you think about this stitching job. It's kind of a little Frankenstein-y looking, I know, but it'll work for yard pants. Thank you for joining me today. If you haven't already, don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe if you want to follow me, and I will see you in the next video.